Barbados received a donation of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines on August 13th, and within days, its rollout got underway. Pfizer is the first vaccine in the fight against COVID-19 to be given full approval by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. It is also the only vaccine being administered to young people between the ages of 12 and 17. On this one-on-one, we speak to a noted pediatrician about what parents should know about getting their children vaccinated. We also have a conversation with the co-coordinator of the National Vaccination Program and a frontline worker who survived COVID-19 after going to death's door shares her story. Good evening, I am Lisa Lord, and our first guest is the eminent pediatrician, Professor Anne St. John. Professor, thank you for joining us.
It's lovely to be here with you, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Now, you've been a pediatrician for more than 40 years.
That's correct.
You also specialize in infectious diseases.
Yes.
And you're very familiar with the childhood immunization program here in Barbados. Now, I want you to walk me through the importance of such a program and how the island has benefited from it over the years.
Well, our immunization program is in keeping with the World Health Organization's recommendations, EPI, and this consists of vaccine for diphtheria, whooping cough, tetanus, polio, Haemophilus influenza B, and hepatitis B. The primary vaccines are given at 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. Then at 1 year, measles, mumps, rubella, and 15 months or 1 year, chickenpox vaccine. This is followed by a vaccine for diphtheria, whooping cough, tetanus, a booster at 18 months with an MMR vaccine. And following that, there is a second booster for diphtheria, whooping cough, tetanus. That's given at 4.5 years. And this is followed by a booster at 11, around when you take common entrance exam, as well as the HPV vaccine against papillomavirus, which is associated with cervical cancer and diseases spread by that virus.
And how have we benefited over the years in terms of keeping out these viruses?
Well, we have benefited because we followed international guidelines. Those who are about younger than 40 would have not received Haemophilus B vaccine and hepatitis B. And prior to that immunization coming on board, we saw a number of children with bacterial meningitis, and that used to damage the brain, attack the neurological system. So somewhere around about 10, 15 years ago, the Haemophilus B came on board and hepatitis B. And so we have not seen a case of bacterial meningitis in a child. This is excluded a newborn for, I can't remember how long it was now.
So we're seeing the benefits of it.
Definitely so. And hepatitis B, which is spread through sexual transmission and body fluids, so that's also a plus. And I can't even tell you when last we saw polio. I think it was like the 60s, diphtheria, and tetanus also. We don't see those anymore. There's another disease which I would like to mention, congenital rubella. That's part of the MMR, which is measles, mumps, and rubella, German measles, also known as. And that disease used to affect women in pregnancy, and it would cause abnormalities in the babies like congenital heart disease, deafness, and sometimes it affected the eyes and their neurological development. Well, we have a center, the Irving Wilson School, where the blind and deaf children would usually be schooled. And I have been informed that of recent number of years, we're not seeing any children with congenital deafness because rubella has been eliminated. Unfortunately, the heart disease also, we're not seeing those. So that is another positive thing about immunizations in Barbados.
I want to move now and look at the major topic right now, COVID-19. I want to know how it presents itself in children in terms of the general effects that it would have.
COVID has come on board as a relatively new virus. It's a new virus. However, it's a different strain of virus which is around. For those who follow the medical literature, around 2009, we had the SARS virus, which affected a lot of people worldwide. And it's coronavirus. So this is called COVID-2. It's a different virus strain. And so it's come on board as a new virus, and it has really taken the world and caused a pandemic since late 2019. It really has swept the world. Now, first of all, it was thought to only affect adults, and certainly that has not shown to be the case, because as time has passed and we're on a learning curve with this virus strain, we've found that children are affected as well. Children used to contract the virus usually from an adult, and so you have a child who may be asymptomatic, no symptoms. Majority of children used to be asymptomatic, and certainly now, as time has gone by, we have more experience and more data collected. We've found that there are sequelae for the children. The children may present with cold and cough and fever, just not well, tiredness, lethargy, diarrhea. Symptoms that are general. However, there are some children who go on to complications, and this is like 5 to 9 in a million. There is the MIS syndrome, MIS-C for child, multi-inflammatory syndrome in children. And certainly, this is something which is very frightening to parents and those who hear about it. It does not affect the children that frequently because we don't have the large numbers. But that is the consequence which we try to prevent in children.
Are there any symptoms regarding MIS-C that you can look for?
Yes, indeed. Children present with fever, red eyes, lethargy, tiredness, diarrhea. But this seems to happen after they have the acute presentation or they are not symptomatic. We have had a case here who unfortunately did not make it, but it presented later. And you have to be aware that even though you see the child and there's no history of the COVID virus, then it may be the symptom that they're having. And I believe in that child, there may have been a relative that they were exposed to, a known relative. But any child who presents now, even diarrhea, and you have the least suspicion, they should have a test for COVID.
In terms of the general impact of COVID on children on the island, are you aware of the numbers?
I believe some over 200 children, when I last knew the count, now that was a number of months ago, that had been diagnosed as positive because of a relative being positive or they were admitted to the Harrison Point. But I am sure the numbers have increased by now.
No, we have Pfizer.
Yes.
Understandably, some parents may have reservations about getting their children vaccinated against COVID-19. What advice would you give them, having been a pediatrician for more than 4 decades?
I would give the advice that this vaccine has been involved in trials. It's had phase 1, 2, and 3 trials out of our jurisdiction. I know a number of people always put their backs up when they hear vaccine. Somebody may be trying to try or experiment on their child. However, other children have been, you could say, experimented on, which it isn't what's happening, but it has been tried in trials overseas in thousands and thousands of children. So we're getting it now long afterwards. We have been fortunate to access this vaccine because it's much more expensive, and I understand that we got it as a gift. However, we need to be cognizant of the fact that there are advantages to having immunizations, as I mentioned, for the ones that have been around a long time. And don't get me wrong, I know that when the MMR vaccine came out as a triple vaccine, people had their backs up against the wall as well. No matter they were given M single before, they wanted to know, is it going to harm my child? That's a natural reaction of a parent to want the best for their child. So I would advise, certainly, adults have had their opportunity, and there are still opportunities now to be vaccinated. We have 3 types of vaccine that we can have. We are so fortunate because remember back last year when we couldn't get any vaccine. And so I do encourage parents to have their children vaccinated. I would say that I've even run into some at my office who are telling the parent, I wish to have the vaccine. The parent didn't have the vaccine yet. They were sitting on the fence. So the child sometimes can persuade the parent to go along and have the vaccine as well.
And what are the pros, if you could break it down for us?
Yeah, there are a lot of pros there. One of the main theories given for having the vaccine is it allows you to reduce the excretion of the illness, apart from the immunity it confers. And I won't go into the details of how you get the immunity and the spike protein and different types of COVID vaccine in the interest of time. We've heard it so often. But certainly, any immunity against a disease is a positive thing to have. Once we get a new strain and a new virus, we are having issues. For example, Zika virus. There is no vaccine, but you can imagine a few years ago, remember how many people were affected by Zika, chikungunya, for example. Then there's dengue fever as well. When you get the strain that hasn't been in the community for a long time, then you tend to get thousands of people affected by the particular virus. So it is worthwhile to have some kind of immunity, and this is what the vaccine confers.
But what about parents that say to you, it's been developed too quickly, I don't trust it?
Yes, they do have a point there. However, there is some history to give on vaccines. Formerly, say 4, 5, 6 decades ago, it took a while to develop a vaccine because science was not on the cutting edge as it is today. We have new technology. This is a 3rd generation type of vaccine. And we're using DNA for the AstraZeneca, the Sinopharm, and the Johnson & Johnson. And we're having Moderna and Pfizer are RNA vaccines. So messenger RNA, where it carries the message into the cell and the cytoplasm of the cell, not the nucleus. There is an argument by some people, you're changing people's DNA. Well, the DNA is in the nucleus, it's not in the cytoplasm. And certainly the DNA viruses, DNA vaccines transmit the virus to the spike protein. They do that with a carrier, which is an arbovirus, which is like a dengue type virus, which is inactivated. So, truth be told, the scientists have been working on this technology for at least a decade when the SARS outbreak occurred. So then the situation occurred, they had been working on this for a long time, and up came this new virus, and they were easily able to incorporate it and generate a vaccine. So it's unfortunate that the vaccine has been mooted, certainly the Pfizer one, which first came out as for emergency use. And that word confers to people, well, if we don't have to use it, it's only for emergency. And then the other E is experiment came along with it as well. You hear emergency use, that's what's happening. However, I am very pleased to see that a week or two ago, the word emergency use was removed, and now it is recognized as a vaccine which can be used with little fears of complications.
And from where you sit, you have all confidence in children over the age of 12 getting this vaccine.
I do, and I will certainly look forward. I know trials are going on now for the younger children. So 4 to 12, maybe they say September, October, they may have approval for 4 to 12, again, to come as the emergency use vaccine for that age group. So we are indeed fortunate. And you know, you have to look at the pros and cons. You have to look at the fact that if the child gets the illness, the adult gets the illness, there are a lot of complications that can occur. And people worry about the side effects of the vaccine. Well, informed consent is very important. Let the parent know. Fever, chills, not feeling so good, fatigue. And many people tell you, including myself, I didn't even know I had a vaccine, and mine I had early, February, quite early in the game, because that's how I believe. I wouldn't want to advise people to take something that could harm their child. That is not my nature, for sure.
Professor St. John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, too.
That was eminent pediatrician Professor St. John. When we come back, we speak to the co-coordinator of the National Vaccination Program, Major David Clark.
Vaccines have both protected and kept children healthy from serious illnesses such as whooping cough, measles, crippling diseases like polio, and others. Vaccines help your immune system to do its job better and faster, and that protects you from serious disease. Like a good security guard, the immune system is always on patrol in your body, looking for invading germs. When it comes across a germ, it begins releasing antibodies to fight that germ. These antibodies work to attack, weaken, and destroy the germ. The COVID-19 vaccine is no different. It will work to help your immune system fight COVID effectively. All vaccines go through strict trials before they are approved for use in the population. Even after the COVID-19 vaccines are approved for use in the general population, monitoring for safety continues. Vaccines are safe, and they work.
This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Pan American Health Organization.
Everything comes at a cost. And these days, no one profits from the loss, like when a child is forced to trade school day socialization for screen time study, when a disease decides to disrupt our daily routine, and suddenly every one of us is coming undone, losing loved ones' lives and livelihoods, breath and breadwinners, families and festivals and freedoms. God, we feel like it's too much hassle to be human. We will always remember the years the earth spun quieter, but Mother Nature showed us how the simple act of standing still can wage war on an illness. So may we remember how to be our own army, how it takes cooperation for a community to build immunity, how unity can nurse us back to normalcy. Why stop at one family when we could save all?
Welcome back. Major David Clark is the co-coordinator of the National Vaccination Program, a major assignment. Major, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, over the past few months, more than 90,000 Barbadians have now been fully vaccinated against this virus. In the beginning, you had a few hiccups, but you've learned some lessons and the program seems to be running smoothly.
Yes, I think it is running relatively smoothly, but you will always have hiccups once you're dealing with human beings. We started out with a very ambitious program, and we were trying to vaccinate as many people as quickly as possible. Of course, like anything is, you have to get accustomed to the process. Yeah. And although our public health system, we are accustomed to vaccinating people, we're actually vaccinating a lot of sites that we don't normally use. And so we tried the drive-thrus, we did all over the place. And certainly we set up tents down at Checker Hall. We had people come in. And I think we did a relatively good job. And certainly when the ASH came, we had to rethink the whole operation of using the outdoors. And so as a result, if you notice, most of our sites are now completely enclosed to keep people out of the elements. And I think we have learned in terms of how to utilize the locations better and also the flow of the actual vaccination process.
You mentioned a lot of sites. You do have a lot of centers now. Mm-hmm. How has that been working for you?
Yeah, we have a lot of centers, but I don't actually run every center every day. Mm-hmm. We looked at the demographics and where people are, ease of access. And so we have a number of centers. And we also use the centers that are actually easy for the flow, the vaccination flow. There are some sites that we have lots of seating. The flow is nice, the temperature is cool, people can relax, and we have a drive-through. So we've tried to utilize the sites based on the people we attract into that site.
Now you have 3 choices of vaccine on the island. You have AstraZeneca, Sinopharm, and now Pfizer. Are people coming in and requesting exactly which one they want?
most definitely. People are coming in. You have a choice of the 3 vaccines, as you've said. And certainly what we see is a small number are actually going for the Sinopharm. We have a lot of second dose AstraZeneca people coming, but we have some older people who are requesting the AstraZeneca. But I can say all of the people probably under 40 are Pfizer people.
Yeah, we realized that within the first few days of the Pfizer vaccine rollout, the response was overwhelming.
Yes, I think certainly Pfizer seems to be the vaccine of choice for most Barbadians at this time.
You know, we've started with the over 12 group, over age 12. Anything in particular has been put in place to deal with that young demographic?
Well, certainly we have, and also I must encourage the young people that must take their vaccination cards with them to the site, because if they've had a vaccine within 4 weeks, for the ones who had what we would term the 11 plus vaccination, you cannot have another vaccine within 4 weeks of that. So if you've had a vaccine, you have to wait, delay your Pfizer vaccine, because most of them are asking for that. And that's the only one approved for people 12 to 17. So I would say that it is going relatively smooth. Hopefully all the young people will come and get vaccinated, and there will be herd immunity within the school population.
Have you had to put any special measures in place, though, to deal with that age?
Not really. It's the same process. The only other measure is that they come with a parent. So you have twice as much seating is required, because where you would have one person, you actually have 2. And so even in the recovery room where we have the young people, you would have the parent in the recovery room as well. But what we have done is in the recovery room, we have added 2 people to send certificates. So if the parent was already fully vaccinated, what we actually ask them while they're waiting to go and check if their certificate has been sent and to confirm the information. Because when we started, lots of people were giving us not necessarily accurate information. The email addresses some of them were made up, and people did tell me they made them up on the spot because they didn't want us to have their email address. But now they realize that the reason was to send a certificate. We spend lots of time changing email addresses and correcting email addresses.
How has that been going? Because I know some people were waiting quite a long time to get their certificate.
Yes, well, we started when we got approval, because there was an approval process before we could do the e-seal certificate. We had about 77,000 people already fully vaccinated. And so we had 77,000 certificates backlogged to send out. Wow. But as soon as we opened the email address, we had about 12,000 emails coming into the box with people who need to travel. I'm going to school, I have to go away for work. And so we started working on the inbox to try and clear that up. But also I assigned people to send out the emails for each site. It's a slow process because we have to make sure that the information is correct, that the email address is correct. Because if you send an email to email address, then it doesn't go. There's a cost attached to sending each certificate. So every time we send a certificate that goes to a wrong email or is not correct, there's a cost attached. And so I've asked all of my operators to confirm the information before they send the emails.
What has been the greatest challenge so far with the national vaccination program?
I think the greatest challenge has been the human resource aspect of it. Making sure that we have enough people to do the jobs we have. And certainly our public health workers have gone above and beyond the call of duty. And I lift my hats off to them. I mean, there are nurses who've been standing on their feet for the entire day vaccinating people. We start early. We may start vaccinating at 10 o'clock, but actually the process for the nurses start sometimes at 7:30. And so it's a long day. And I could also say that the nurses never finish until we vaccinated everybody at the site. I've got one nurse who vaccinated 800 people one day. So I can say there's no shortage of goodwill and hard work among the public health nurses.
And are you happy with the level of response that you would have seen since we started the program to today?
I am. I'm happy with the response. I still would not like people to come and line up at 6 o'clock in the morning when we don't open the doors until 9 or
They're
10
trying
o'clock.
to be first.
Yes, but there's no need. It means that by 12 o'clock in the day, all those people, we've done all those people. It means that then we have a tiny little trickle of people
In the afternoon.
in the afternoon. And so there's no need to line up in the sun early in the mornings.
And you're still having a lot of walk-ins.
Yeah, so this week, the last 2 weeks, we've basically been doing walk-ins because we've also trying to get through the AstraZeneca second doses. And so anybody who didn't receive a call from us or an email, we were encouraging them to come and get their second dose.
Major, thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
And that was Major David Clark, the co-coordinator of the National Vaccination Program. When we return, we speak to a registered nurse who survived COVID-19.
For the past year, because of the pandemic, I had to take most of my classes online. I would rather be at school. I miss interacting with my teachers and friends. I want to be vaccinated. Getting vaccinated can help protect me, my teachers, friends, and family from COVID-19. I also understand that when vaccinated, I must continue to keep my guard up by washing my hands with soap and water frequently, wearing my mask properly, by covering my nose and mouth, and avoiding crowds. Vaccines are safe and they work.
This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Pan American Health Organization.
Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another, get liberation. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function. Remove outdoor objects. Make sure that you went to the ATM. Stock up with water. Make sure you clean the guttering, Lord. What about clean food? Make sure you got some stock up in your room. Make sure you prop up the paling and tie down the roof. Let me start to prepare real soon. Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another, get liberation. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function.
Now, before coming here, we got the chance to sit down and hear from registered nurse Sophia Brathwaite, who spent more than 2 weeks fighting the most severe symptoms of COVID-19, and she shared her story with us.
How I got into nursing, it was always a life plan for me from the time I was young. I got into nursing at the age around 35 or so. I went back to school. I did my CXCs and I got into nursing because I believe that it is my calling to help people. I always wanted to help people. I think that nursing is not only about physical, but also mental. And sometimes we need to heal persons from outside and also inside. So nursing is my calling. I love it and I won't trade it. I contracted COVID around the 14th of February 2021. I went to work on Friday, jovious, happy, talking to my colleagues. I had the weekend off, so I was very happy. I came home the Friday night, enjoyed myself, I slept. I got up, did my morning chores as usual, went to sleep, feeling a little tired around 1 p.m. I got up around 4 o'clock with some very bad headaches, and my face was really swollen and a little tender to touch. It was really hurting. So normally I would say it was my sinuses. I took some medication for sinuses because my nasal was blocked, and I said, well, my sinuses. I went to sleep. I got up around 7:38. And then when I got up, I realized I could not swallow. I was in so much pain to swallow, so I was like Well, I took the medication, which usually works. I started to become scared because I was getting a lot of joint pains by this time. So I said, let me just doze a little. I got up around 11 o'clock, feeling worse. I have never experienced it. And the first thing that came to mind, because in that time, dengue was very prevalent. So I said, probably it's dengue. But I felt so bad. I called my son. I said, come and take me to the hospital. I'm not feeling right. At this time, I had no fever, none whatsoever. He took me to Fast Track where I saw a doctor. They gave me some medication. They also gave me a PCR swab with the swabbing needle. And I came back home about 1:30 in the morning time. I slept really uncomfortable during the night. I got up this Sunday, trying to fight it, saying my sinuses or, I was really overworked too. I was really tired. I went to bed. I got up around 2:30. I was in so much pain. The pain is a pain that I never had in my life. I had pain going from my eyes to the back of my head. I had every joint pain you could think about. And all I telling myself, I have dengue. I can turn left, I can turn right. The pain was so much that I was on the floor, just shaking. I called my son. I tell my son, I'm not feeling good. And he said, Mommy, why you sound so? I said, I can't swallow. My throat is hurting. He said, Mommy, I come in. He came and he took me to the accident emergency hospital. Whilst there, I was attended to. I still, at that time, had no fever. Even to touch, I wasn't hot. They took me inside. They took me into, they did the normal COVID, asking normal COVID questions if I had a cough or what the case may be. At this time, I had no cough. I didn't have any cough, I didn't have anything. They took me in a room and gave me a swab, a rapid PCR swab. It came back positive, but by that time, between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the evening, I started to deteriorate. I got worse. So I started to cry because the pain, I can turn my eyes, my ears was ringing, my throat was like nothing I ever felt before. The pain was so much. So about 5:30 in the morning, they came and they told me, well, we have to transport you to Blackman or Gallup because you're positive. So coming back positive, and I know the protocols, what had happened now, I said, okay, no problem. So they transported me by ambulance to the Blackman or Gallup hospital. I went in, I was admitted, and I went into the room. And at that time, there was just one patient in there with me. So I went, but as I said, at that time, I started to deteriorate. So then afterwards, I started to deteriorate, and it was my one. Being concerned with my family, I called and they recommended that my kids, I have 2 boys and 1 daughter, to go and get swabbed. My daughter and my kids, they went to the gymnasium and got swabbed. My daughter came back positive. My 2 sons was negative. Even my son that took me to the hospital, that was with me, he was negative, and everybody thought that he would have been positive because he was the person who was actually under me. Okay, my daughter said, Mommy, I came back positive, but at that time, all she had was a mild cough. She didn't have any severe symptoms. All she had was a mild cough because she's a known asthmatic, so I would expect that she would have some kind of respiratory issue. As I said, being a nurse, and I understand how COVID works, I was expecting that. Okay. She also came up to Blackman and Gallup. But by this time, no, I started to deteriorate more. Because now I had chills. So it felt like if my body was in an ice bucket. So they would come and put like 5 sheets on me because I felt so cold. I was crying. I lost my appetite. I ended up with diarrhea for 5 days. I can move. I can bathe my skin. Anything to touch me was like, and I started to think, why is it? Why me? Why everybody got COVID, and I have to be like this? Persons coming and going. I seen persons coming into Blackman or Gallup and leaving. But look at me, I deteriorating. me now, a single mother, studying now. My daughter is in isolation with me. I have 2 sons home. You know, one is a minor, one is an adult, who concerned about me. I have a mother who is also sick, but she wasn't COVID. So by the 4th day I was in Black Monogala. I had no appetite, diarrhea, still just deteriorating slowly. There was a point in time now, every morning you had to go and get your vitals done. My heart rate was 135. My blood sugars was 15 and 16. My SpO2, when I went in, was at 96. By the 4th day, my SpO2 was 92%. By this time, I could not breathe. A nurse came to me. She said, "Brathwaite, you don't look right." I said, "I'm not feeling I can make it." I said, "I'm not going to make it." She said, "Come with me now." I went into an isolation room. She put me on the bed. And when she checked my heart rate, it was 143. Then when she checked my heart rate, my SpO2 was 90. I can breathe. I can talk. It was so hard. My daughter came and my daughter said, "Mommy," she's always positive. She's always positive. She's one of these persons that don't care about the situation. "Mommy," she said, "Mommy, I believe in you, but you can be good. You can be good." I said, "Leah," I said, "You go, I can be good." I put in my trust in God. She said, "Mommy," because my daughter is Muslim. I said, "Mommy, I can pray." I said, "She go." She got on the bus. I know for her, it was hard to leave me. She got to the hotel, she called me. By this time, it became worse. Because now I can't lay. I can't lay flat. Because to lay flat, you can't breathe at all. The doctors came and they put on the cardiac monitor, they took bloods, put me on oxygen. So I had an oxygen machine next to me. I had IV fluids going. I had to be taking steroids to keep my lungs open. It's the most curious thing you could ever think. I have persons next to me that are dying, literally dying. And I asking myself if I next. I remember I got up about 2:30 in the morning. I was in so much, I got up. I never prayed so hard in my life. I never prayed so hard yet. And my life flashed in front of me. When I woke up, I can't breathe. And as a healthcare professional, knowing that I have no mucus on my lungs, I know that I don't have pneumonia, I know I don't have bronchitis, but yet I can't breathe. I literally can't breathe. It is the most frightening thing to have COVID and your lungs saying, I'm not expanding, I'm not going anywhere. I was on face mask at 15 liters and my SpO2 was still 89 and 90. I sleeping with 2 pillows upright because if I lie, I will die. I know IV fluids. And to make things worse now, because of the steroids, my blood sugar is going to 15 and 16 and 17 and 25 and 35. And I got about 30 in the morning time. And I started to cry so bad. I started to cry. Because the hardest thing you could ever think about is knowing that you have children that has no fathers. You're a single mother. and you're in a situation where you don't know. The hardest thing to know that it's a possibility that you will die. And you have to pick up that phone and call a relative and said, listen to me, when I die, could you take my son? Because you know his father is not here. Take my son for me and take my daughter and look after her. Make sure she finished college. Make sure that my son go back to school. Make sure that he has the prerequisites to be a man, because I'm not going to make it. He just lost his father. So for me, I started to cry. So a nurse came over and a doctor came over to me and tried to counsel me. So at that time, I had mixed feelings. I was giving up. I was literally giving up because I was like, I can't breathe. They came. I eventually drift off into sleep and I got up. And I never prayed so hard in my life yet. I said, Father Lord, I said I worked so hard to become a nurse. I raised my kids alone. I worked so hard and I have to complete your work. I'm here for a reason. I got to finish my school. I want to become the best nurse that I could be. I want to help people. There's something that I always like to help people. I want to tell my story so I can give people an opportunity to know if she can survive it and things I went, all diversities I overcome, mountains I climbed. I fell, but I got up and I went. It's like, I come too far to give up. And I had to empower myself. They came and I remember like 2 days after that, I said, listen to me, I don't want any more oxygen. Because I give up. Just let me go. Don't incubate me. Because if you do that, I can't talk to my kids. Because as a healthcare professional, I know that if you do that and I die, I can't talk to my kids. Just let me die this way. I had already made up my mind that I was going to die. But then a will in me decided, listen, fight. God gives the hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. And I remember something that the minister of health said, no retreat, no surrender. No retreat, no surrender. I often hear Minister Bossett say that. And they said, I ain't surrendering. And you know what I did? I started to build myself up mentally. I was still on the oxygen, but I never take it off. I did long exercises. The food I still at that point wasn't eating, but then I tried. And I said, this to me, I'm gonna fight this battle. When the point came for me to get discharged, I still had low oxygen. But I said, let me go home so I can, if I go home and I die, let me die home. Let me die with my kids. I went to the hotel, still with low oxygens, still with high blood sugars, still can't talk, but I said, still part of me was saying, look, I'd rather die with my kids if something happened than to be there, they can't see me. And sometimes being the comfort of your children, your home, sometimes bring you back up, because when I went to the hotel and I saw my daughter, I said, well, I have to breathe again. I spoke to my son. I said, I got to live again. I spoke to my mom. I have to strive again. I spoke to my sisters. No, I will live. And then God said, I'm giving you a chance. So what I did, I started to do long exercises. I left the hospital. I came home and my kids was with me 100%. I went, I took the medications. My blood sugars was so high. I said, Father Lord, what is next? But I gonna fight this. My sugars was 35 and 17, so it started to affect my eyes. I could not see. And my lungs was just, I tried everything. I had fluid in my lungs, because that's what COVID does. It messes you up. It's multi-organal. It affects every organ in your body. It went from there now to my heart. It went from there to my kidneys. It went from there to my thyroids. It went from there to my liver. It went from there to my sight. And yet, I had to not give up. Dr. Corey Ford said, I saw you at your worst. and I'm going to bring you through this. It was a changing life experience for me. It made me think about life and how persons take COVID for granted. Some persons think that because, people asymptomatic, don't have any symptoms, and there are persons like me that had COVID, that had to fight to live. I went to work in February, and I only returned to work about 2 weeks ago. As I said earlier, for me, it affected all of my organs. It affected my whole life. It had to change. I couldn't walk too far because I would pass out. I had to get portable oxygens because there had times that, my oxygen will go from 96% to 92 to 90. I can't breathe. So for me, I would tell anyone, do not take COVID-19 for granted. You may have COVID like my daughter and do not have no severe symptoms. But when you pass that on to someone else, you compromise their life. And you compromise their family, compromise their children. Simple things, hand washing, wearing masks, people take for granted. But that can save someone's life. For me, it's a life changer. I don't take life for granted anymore. I don't take wearing a mask for granted. I don't take washing my hands for granted because I know how close I came to leaving my children. At present time, I am thankful for life, thankful to be here. And I want people to know of my story because there are nurses that didn't make it. I am a nurse that worked through shutdown. I work with COVID patients. When everyone was home, I did my national duty. And not only me, but a lot of nurses put their lives online. And sometimes persons don't know what we go through. Because if we go to work and we pick up something or anything, we can compromise both patients and home. So you can't take it for granted. So when a nurse like myself survive COVID-19 and can come and say, listen, I survived it, but don't take these things for granted. You now have to tell yourself, I can't take it for granted because that could be me. Coming out of COVID right now, I'm a diabetic. I still cannot breathe adequately. I still have heart issues. I still have issues with so many things that I never had before. I often sit and ask myself about this vaccine. I did my research and I said, the vaccine can save, as I use these words, could save a person's life. Because what COVID does, it brings out things in your body are dormant. Things that you don't even know that you have. And you get COVID, it will bring it out to surface. So my kids have been vaccinated. As soon as I get the all clear, I too myself will be vaccinated. Because going through this whole experience taught me, yes, I can still catch COVID with the vaccine, but I know that my symptoms will not be severe and cause me to think about dying. Until you've been there, you don't know. Right now, people have so many questions about the vaccine. As a nurse, I did pharmacology. And I know that there's no medication out there that does not have a side effects. So, if the vaccine can cause you not to have severe symptoms, like what I experienced or persons before me that died or recover, I would say I will take the vaccine. My kids have already been vaccinated. My daughter is asthmatic. She's also anemic. She took the vaccine and she's perfectly fine. My son is a minor and he's perfectly fine. So I too myself will take the vaccine because I do not ever want to get back to where I was before. It's an experience I would not like anyone to have. COVID-19 is serious, it's not a game. And now with this new variant, Delta, it's not like the English strain. You may get away with the English, but this Delta is nothing to play with. COVID-19 is a life changer for me. Praise God, I am still here with my kids. I can tell my story.
That was registered nurse Sophia Brathwaite sharing her story, and she is encouraging all Barbadians to get vaccinated. I am Lisa Lord, and this was One on One.